right. Well, hey, good evening, everybody. Just want to say, first and foremost, thank you all once again for joining us, for pressing your way out on a Tuesday night. For those who are joining us in our Zoom group, as well as those who are catching us by way of social media, whether you're with us live or you're going to watch us in replay. I want to say thank you once again for taking the time and hearing what it is that the Lord is saying to this particular community. And I hope that this word is a blessing to you. In preparation for this word, I was kind of, in the mindset of thinking about where we are, and we're already in the ninth month of this year. And I don't know about you, but for me, this has been probably one of the longest, as well as one of the fastest years that I can remember in a while. It really seems like a lot of stuff is happening within short windows of time. It seems like, some of the things that are happening, normally these are occurrences that would normally say happen within the span of 10 years, of 5 years, or within 3 years. But it really seems like a lot of stuff is happening in a condensed and accelerated space of time. And if you've been with us since January, you know that coming into this year, our theme has been being in sync with God. And when I first heard the theme, it was actually in prayer at the beginning of this year. And when I heard being in sync with God, I was thinking to myself, Lord, that's a no brainer. Everybody should want to be in sync with you. But what I didn't factor into the equation as it relates to this theme was the degree of distractions that will come to get many of us off track. I wasn't thinking that when I heard be in sync with the Lord. If you're familiar with the Second Timothy, I believe it's around the second chapter, Paul is speaking of a good soldier. And it says that, a good soldier who engages in war, what he doesn't do is he doesn't entangle himself with the issues of life, with the affairs of life. And so what I'm coming to see on a greater level is that this being in sync with God, it requires a greater level of personal discipline. Okay. And what I also recognize is that these personal disciplines are very easy to overlook, especially when you have competing focuses. However, we as disciples, and I'm making an assumption, I'm hoping that we all consider ourselves as disciples. But the reality is that as a disciple, our priority should be Jesus Christ. I shared this with another group, and I believe it's only right to share with this particular group. And that is, discipleship is not just how we're related to God. It's not just, we're his sons and we're his daughters, but discipleship also speaks to how we relate to God, meaning that, I'm partaking in the work that he himself was partaking in. The word calls us co-laborers. And as a co-laborer, I need to understand the why behind what it is that he's doing, because he is entrusting me with the very same work that he was doing. And so a disciple is a learner. And what it is that as a disciple, I'm studying the one that I am becoming. Okay. And so, as it relates to this whole discipline, this discipleship, and a lot of things that have been transpiring this year, the Lord, not just for you all, but the Lord has really been highlighting some areas within myself, and one of the things that the Lord has been dealing with me about is not being quick to speak, being more of an observer. There have been some things that I've been hearing and that I've been seeing that I wanted to talk about, but the Lord didn't give me the green light to share it. However, and there's other things that the Lord has spoken to me about. But what he was saying is that you need to have a deeper understanding of that revelation before you try to release it. And then lastly, the Lord has also said that, there's some things that I'm highlighting to you that you need to share with the people. And you need to make sure that you expound upon it in a way that they get it and not be in a rush, in a hurry to move on to the next thing. And so we've talked about that before. And even on tonight, with what we're going to be discussing, I feel like God still has his finger on this particular area. So with that being said, if you would, please turn with me to Acts. We're going to start in chapter 3. And we're going to read verses 1 through 10, and that's going to be the focus for tonight. Once again, thank you for everybody who's joined us in the Zoom community, as well as online. This is Acts chapter 3, starting at verse 1. And it reads, "Now Peter and John went up together to the temple at the hour of prayer, the ninth hour. And a certain man lame from his mother's womb was carried, whom they laid daily," and I need y'all to hear that, "whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, to ask alms of those who entered the temple, who seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, asked for alms. And fixing his eyes on him with John, Peter said, 'Look at us.' So he gave them his attention, expecting to receive something from them. Then Peter said, 'Silver and gold I do not have, but what I do have, I give you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk.' And he took him by the right hand and lifted him up. And immediately his feet and ankle bones received strength. So he, leaping up, stood and walked and entered the temple with them, walking, leaping, and praising God. And all the people saw him walking and praising God. Then they knew that it was he who was set begging alms at the beautiful gate of the temple. And they were filled with wonder and amazement at what had happened to him." Tonight, for a focus, for a message, I've titled this message, Godly Interruptions. Godly Interruptions. A couple of weeks ago on Facebook, I reposted something that I had seen on another page. And when I reposted, it was a meme that somebody created, and it said, "Normal isn't coming back. Jesus is." Normal isn't coming back, period. Jesus is, period. And I said that to say this, is that because for many of us, it's almost like we're suspended in time. We don't know how to make progress, in the now, because we want things to go back to how they were. And as a result, if we're not careful, we're going to miss out on seeing God in the midst of what's going on. Where we pick up in this third chapter of Acts, John and Peter and John, they were going about the normalcy of their day. They were, this is what they did. They went and they prayed at this specific hour as a group. And so the word says is that they were going to the temple with everyone to pray. It was a part of their routine. However, on this particular day, their routine was interrupted by a moment orchestrated by God. If you think about what we've been talking about over the course of this year, there's been this symmetry in the message, as it relates to how we see ourselves and how we show up in the world. Okay, that's the scene. That's what binds this all together. And I believe that God has us fixated on this particular kind of message, because a lot of us are still having this difficulty of accepting the reality that God has placed us here to be an answer to real world issues. The word declares, "Christ in you, the hope of glory." So the thing is that you carry something that the world needs, but because we don't have the right attitude or mindset about ourselves, we refuse to recognize that in these moments that occur, we're supposed to be the ones offering up what is needed. And so what ends up happening is that we're ingrained with this thought. We use this excuse that says, "Well, I'm not God." and because I'm not God, I can't do anything. But I want to caution you, and I want to say this is that while you might not be God, and you got to consider the fact that he's ordaining these moments in our lives when the expectation is not for us to focus on ourselves and our own abilities, but that we yield to him in that moment so that we are able to get done what needs to be done. And that is the service of others. So in this particular text, what we see Peter, he says, silver and gold I don't have, but what I do have, I give. Now, if you understand, if from this particular text, it says that the man, what he wanted was he wanted money. He wanted money to make it through the day. But the reality is that he was going to be back there the very next day. The word says that he was laid at this particular gate daily. And so the money was satisfied the moment, but it was not addressing the real need in his life. And so what Peter does is that he assesses the need, Peter and John. And what was needed was he needed an encounter with something that would deliver him from his condition. So Peter, he didn't manufacture something that he didn't have, but he understood the weight of what it was that he did have. And because he understood the weight of what he had, he knew that if I give this, you are going to be in a different condition the moment you receive it. If you remember, we talked about this some months ago. We talked about the power, right? We talked about this around the time of, I believe it was Pentecost. We talked about the power from Acts chapter 1. See, Peter understood that he had power. In Acts chapter 1, Jesus said that, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. And this is what Jesus also says. He says that you will be a witness unto me. And when we were discussing that particular lesson, we said that now, if Jesus said you will be a witness of me, that would suggest that we are, we observed what it is that Jesus has done. But when Jesus says that you will be a witness to me or unto me, this means that he would direct people to us. And in doing so, we are to manifest what brings him glory. So this particular text says that the man fixed his eyes on Peter and John, and it says that he gave them his attention. Because once again, if you tie that in what we just said about power from Acts 1, it says that you will be a witness to me. So he's going to direct people to observe you. And in the observation of you, there's going to be an exchange that's supposed to take place. And so my question to you is that when God orchestrates these moments, will you be sensitive enough to hear him and committed enough to do what needs to be done? Can you be interrupted by God? I said all that to get to that point. Can you be interrupted by God? Most of the times we want stuff done within the span and the scope of our own convenience. It has to be done perfectly. It has to be done in my time of availability. But what happens when life is real hectic and real busy and you legitimately have something to get accomplished and God directs and makes contact with somebody who needs an encounter with him? Can you slow yourself down long enough to be the response in the moment? The word says that miracles, signs and wonders follow them that believe. We're not seeing a lot of signs and wonders because it's not because we don't have the powers, because we won't slow ourselves down long enough to be the demonstrators of what it is that God has equipped us with. You have something that can change the narrative of someone's life. And as they have this encounter with what God has given you, they now become a testimony of what it is that you've been carrying. Within the space of the church community, I know a lot of churches, we talk about revival. For years we've been praying for, revival to come in the land, right? And I am of the belief that the reason why we haven't seen this revival, the one that we've been calling for, where there's this mass soul gathering of people surrendering their life to the Lord, is because we've been assuming that the revival is going to take place in the place of our convenience. We've been assuming that the revival is going to take place during a church service, when in reality, the revival is actually going to happen in the middle of a grocery store. When you go out to go buy your orange juice, and you cross paths with somebody, and in that moment you feel like there's something that you're supposed to say, and you feel all nervous, but in the moment you yield to God and you begin to release the word, and that person begins to weep, because the word that you're sharing is the word that they needed to hear. And then as other people begin to see this, then the revival that we've been praying for takes place. The revival is going to happen when you find yourself one day feeling kind of lazy, not wanting to cook. And so, you grab about $30 and head to Taco Bell. And in the process of going to Taco Bell, you encounter somebody who doesn't have groceries of their own, and you give them that money, and then you give them a word of hope. See, that's when the revival takes place, because what you're going to hear is that person talking about how they were on the verge of giving up, but you were in position to meet a need. See, that's when the revival is going to take place. The revival is going to take place when you're at the doctor's office, man, at the receptionist, because, your appointment got pushed back. But in the process of sitting down and fuming in your frustration, you're going to see somebody weeping because they got a bad news, and you go over there and you begin to minister to them. And in the middle of that doctor's office, revival is going to take place. Revival is going to take place when you feel out of nowhere the need to go make somebody something to eat. You don't know why, just the Lord gives you a vision of somebody, and you're looking around and say, Lord, I really don't know what to do, but I just feel like I want to cook it and bring them something. And that becomes the invitation for them to know the Lord. But it was a moment orchestrated by God. Before the lockdown, I remember me and Dr. Tim, we used to meet at Starbucks. There's a lot of ministry take place at Starbucks, but we would meet at Starbucks monthly. And I remember one time we were just kind of sitting there and drinking coffee, and there was a young lady. She was at a table behind us, and in the middle of our conversation, Dr. Tim stops and shifts his focus towards the young lady and says, I feel like the Lord is telling me to share this with you. And I don't recall everything that he shared with the young lady, but I remember the gist of it being something like, the Lord has not forgotten you. And the young lady begins to weep in the middle of Starbucks. See, what happened was, that was a God moment. God interrupted what we went out to do. He interrupted our meeting in order for her to have her meeting. He interrupted our meeting for her to have her meeting with him. And we are moving into a place in time when we have to address our sensitivity to the Lord, and we have to once again examine if our yes has conditions. If our yes to the Lord is predicated on things being a certain way. I want you to write this down and remember this date. This is I believe it's the 14th of September. The Lord told me that this next season of your life is going to be marked by your service. This next season of your life is going to be marked by your service. God is going to deal with those who have the audacity to ask, but an unwillingness to give. God is going to deal with those who have the audacity to ask, but an unwillingness to give. And that give is not just money or whatever. That giving is of yourself. See, there's a lot of people who are consumed, and we talked about this a little bit about 2 weeks ago. We said that God said that if you're 100% consumer, meaning that in every environment you're in, you're the one consuming, but you're never giving, that's a violation of dominion. Because the dominion suggests that we be fruitful and multiply. In the fruitful, that's me exerting something. The word also says freely you've received, so freely you should give. So at some point in time, there's supposed to be an exchange of some sorts that takes place. And so this next season that you're entering in is going to be marked by your service. A lot of us are asking for resources with no intention of putting those things into operation. I'll say this as we're getting ready to transition to the end of this message. The Lord told me that we're getting ready to see the manifestation of the church, and I'm not talking about the building. I want you all to kind of shift from seeing the church as the bricks in the steeple. I want you to start seeing yourself as the church. And this is what the Lord said. He said that the manifestation of the church, we're going to see it in two places. We're going to see it house to house, and we're going to see it in the moment. The manifestation of the church, we're going to see it house to house and in the moment. In the book of Acts, we see how they would move from house to house, having worship and communing together. But something also in the book of Acts and what we just saw in this particular chapter, in the moment, those who were a part of the body manifested what needed to manifest. And so in the moment, you're going to find yourself out and about, speaking to a total stranger, ministering to them, giving them not what they assume that they want, not manufacturing something that you don't have, but you're going to offer what you do have, and you're going to experience and you're going to see how what you have is what they needed. And in that moment, their life is going to be radically transformed. We talked about this the last time we got together, the message about being the priest of your home. And we talked about the Old Testament priest, how once a year, he would go beyond the veil, that he went into the Holy of Holies. And we said that he was the only one who could do it, and he could only do it at the set time. And we said that the priest, he went where others were unable to go. But our current charge, us as believers, is to go where others are unwilling to go. And that unwillingness speaks to the fact that not everybody wants to do it because it's not going to be convenient. We live in an environment right now where everything is heightened. People are concerned about being around each other for various reasons, associated with this disease, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And so we're going to have to find ourselves in difficult places, sharing what the people need to bring the hope in the current situation. I'll share this with you all, and then I'm getting ready to close. The man who was healed at the gate, what ends up happening is that the miracle that he experienced convicted the system that he was living under. The miracle that he experienced convicted the system that he was living under. See the people, the leaders of that system, they had an issue with the fact that he was healed. The reason why they had an issue with the fact that he was healed, because they themselves were trying to condemn Jesus Christ. So his healing, his miracle now becomes a testimony of the fact that he encountered Jesus through these two men. And they wanted to silence that message. But once again, as disciples, we have the responsibility to reach this world. And once again, it's not always going to happen in the place of our convenience. So I want you to ask yourself, is your yes a fixed yes, or is it a yes predicated on stipulations and convenience? Listen, we're going to be hitting this really hard in the days to come. I'm kind of already shifting towards the next year as far as what we're going to be focusing on. The Lord is speaking that to me. And once again, it's around this message of being of the service. You know, you got to ask yourself, you know, what you've been receiving, what we've been consuming. It's not just for the sake of saying, I know something. It has to be to the point where we start to say, that which the Lord has given me is for the purpose of me putting it into operation. And so we're going to be talking more about being of the service in the world, because we are in a time when, listen, we live in a hurting society. We live in a hurting world. And a lot of these issues are going unaddressed, not because, once again, the people are unable to be of assistance. It's just that we're not sensitive to God in the moment to be the assistance. And that is going to have to be checked in the days ahead. Listen, if you want to sow into the ministry, I've been charged with at least putting the ask out there. We currently, you can sow by way of Cash App on $Kingdom Learning. We also have a PayPal of the same name. Feel free to give. We ain't not going to ask you to give a set amount, but if you feel compelled to sow, thank you for doing that. But listen, I want to say thank you all for joining us on this evening. Once again, we meet every Tuesday at 7 p.m. If you want to be a part of the actual Zoom community, we actually have a conversation, Q&A immediately following this portion. Feel free to inbox us, and we will get you the details concerning how to join that group. Once again, I want to say thank you all for joining us on this evening. Bid you Godspeed, and we'll see you all next week, Lord willing. God bless.